This might be for life. Yeah. This might be for life. Stand up when the chief is here. Hands up. Yeah, the chief is here. Stand up when the chief is here. Hands up. Yeah, the chief is here. Yeah, this might be for life.
Hi everybody, and good afternoon, and welcome to our special S-Connect webinar. I usually wear the Chiefs hat, but my head got a bit big and it didn't fit me, so I've had to put that to pasture for a while. But right now we've got a human being, a fantastic energy ball, a young man who has just turned 22, and he has done more in his wild, fantastically successful business career than many of us have, and he's had great achievements. So welcome to John Iadeluca, who's in New York City, and of course we have our very famous Dorian Prosdocimi. I always get that right now. I've learned how to sort of phase his last name. Two Italians here on our show. And John, I'll just do the mini intro, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit more. So John is the CEO of Banz Capital, which is a cryptocurrency hedge fund utilizing a thorough stack of discretionary and automated digital asset investment strategies. He founded and sold the Bitcoin faucet, BittyMe, before turning 18, and worked as a blockchain developer and consultant for Spotify invested companies before he left to focus solely on Banz Capital, which is what he's doing now, with the goal of applying the blockchain and cryptocurrency development perspective to investment management. Now, I have absolutely no idea what that means. Dorian's probably got a better chance of understanding, but John's going to tell us. So, John, welcome. Tell us a little bit, first and foremost, of how old were you when you decided I'm starting a business?
Thanks, Rob, for the introduction. It's an honor to be here. But I'd say overall, age-wise, to start a business, I think I was really, since around like 11 or 12, I saw the movie, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, The Social Network, about Mark Zuckerberg and Sean Parker. And that's, that was kind of like the turning point for me and a solidification that I really wanted to eventually start a business. I just didn't really know exactly what or exactly how. But it wasn't until around 16, 17, when I got introduced to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that I really sort of started structuring a business and started thinking more in terms of a entrepreneur and business creator almost. So I'd say around 16 or 17 was when I really started structuring a vision for that in general.
And it's one thing getting excited about business and reading and studying, but it's another thing finding a business opportunity and pursuing it. And age 12, 13, you have no business experience, but you've got, like any good entrepreneur, you've got an idea and you just think, I'm going to do this. What was that specific idea? And welcome, Hervé. We're going to loop you in a sec. Hervé knows what he's talking about, so he's going to put me and Dorian to shame. But what was that specific idea that got you into business?
I think it was really honestly, in general, I want to say initially programming and computers in general. I think that was really when I sort of saw that I had to be involved in some sort of business capacity with that. And it wasn't until I'd read, the first book I ever read was the book, The Blockchain Revolution. I was around 14 or 15 when I was introduced to the idea of cryptocurrency and blockchain and what it really stood for, not only from a business perspective, but from a more humanity perspective almost as well. And I really just became obsessed with it. And that was really the idea that I knew that I would, just keep falling in love with and just have this immense passion for. And I think that in itself was really when I sort of had a finite perspective of what sort of business or how to, or what sort of market to approach. But I think that around 12 or 13, being introduced to the power of computers and what could be done from sort of any age with the power of programming and development, that was really when I just sort of almost became obsessed. Yeah.
And before I hand to Dorian, was there a mentor that helped you on day one? Was it your dad? Was it I don't know, postman? was there somebody that said this is the way to do it?
I don't think explicitly at that point. My father was involved with music videos and more of an artistic side of thing, and my mom was in marketing. And I think my mom's introduction to, she was just a really fast typer, and I think that her introduction to the power that you can unlock with, honing your skills in terms of computer-wise was sort of my introduction. I think YouTube tutorials, other than that, was sort of my main mentors for learning the ins and outs of it. And I think there's one YouTube channel. I'm not sure if they're still making videos, but they were called The New Boston. And they just had like almost an endless supply of computer tutorials and whatnot. And that was just that was really where I was able to hone my skills and really learn, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess university was never on the radar. So never, ever, and never will be. Dorian, I'm going to let you dive in because you do know the public markets a hell of a lot better than me.
Well, I'm 53 and a long way away from being 22 years old. But before I ask John a question, I want to know what you were doing at the age of 22, Rob.
Age 22, I was at University of Cape Town, final year, business science, about to go to the army for 2 years because we had national service in the old South Africa. I was an infantry officer for 2 years.
Amazing. No, so John, I mean, literally amazing that you've achieved everything you've achieved at age 22. As I said before we came live, I'm 53 and I'm still not anywhere close to achieving what you've achieved. But it's great speaking to you. I have a very simple question, just going back to your sort of formative years and how you got into it. Were there any subjects that you were good at school? Because people always think of people like you and sort of prodigies that are good at sort of crypto and quantitative type sort of things. You always think that they're really good at maths. Is that what you're good at?
I wasn't, honestly, I wasn't the best at math, honestly. And I think really where I was able to really shine in particular was one in English and sort of writing, but also on, the marketing and financial courses that I took, because I think when I was able to sort of see numbers in terms of real things and apply in that source, like I was really able to sort of shine, I guess, because I think my catering towards math and my really skills towards math, I think really started to show when I was able to use them in like financial courses and certain courses like that. But one of my worst, enemies was always like calculus. Like I just, for some reason at that time, I wasn't able to really fully comprehend it until I started to see it in terms of real, world examples and whatnot, if that makes sense.
Okay. I've got other questions, but what I'd love to do is bring Hervé in, who I met recently, and I have to say I got some of the best answers I ever got with a lot of the questions I have about cryptocurrencies and blockchain. So Hervé, why don't you come in and maybe
ask the difficult questions.
Ask the difficult technical questions, because Rob and I are completely out of our depth there.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, first, pleasure to meet you, John, and thank you, Rob and Dorian. It's great to see you guys, and thank you for having me on this panel. So, John, you mentioned the Winklevoss. You mentioned the Social Network movie, and I have to admit that I'm kind of that weird generation where I'm 41 years old, where I'm influenced both by the movie Wall Street and the movie The Social Network. I'm not really sure. I'm still friends with, I have friends and the son of my friends, and I kind of relate to both, or I'm kind of caught in that middle. So finally, the Social Network, which obviously was the Mark Zuckerberg versus the Winklevoss twin, and Tyler and Cameron are friends of mine from New York. And the first time that I heard Bitcoin was at their house. I remember we were watching the World Cup, and they said casually, "Hey, we put a big investment in Bitcoin." And at that time we were just hitting the nightclubs and opening bottles left and right, and I was sure that it was just another nonsense investment. And until I talked to their father, and I says, $11 million seems like a lot of money to put in this. Did you validate it? And he said he did, and he said he thought that it's kind of those risky investments, but it had a lot of potential. So for the following 2 years, I got down the rabbit hole and tried to learn about it. I remember when I was in Los Angeles for 2 weeks in a row. I had a friend from YPO who started the Internet Dubai City. And for 2 weeks, I invited him to launch every single day for him to repeat the exact same thing up until the moment that I had the aha moment. I understood that we're building the most powerful network computer in the world. And still was scared to invest in it. So I was doing mining. So I've mined for a number of years, was one of the first one in the US. And those vehicles about 16 months ago went public. So I had, I would say, a life-changing event when I came across Bitcoin more than any other ventures. But it's something that back in the days I had to explain to a lot of friends of mine, especially at Harvard Business School, where a guy says, "Hey, it just hit $20,000. I want to benefit from that wave, but I don't understand it." So I did a lecture at HBS, basically talking for an hour what it was about. So long story short, I guess what I did was not so much teaching people; it was just telling them what I did and how it worked, and it was a great experience. But I guess to start off with the question, John. I want to know where do you see Bitcoin going in the next few years? We're talking about a rally. We're talking about the world economies falling. We're talking about political instability, stimulus package, etc. Do you see that as a hedge versus traditional markets? And if so, when do you think the rally will start?
Definitely, that's a great question overall in general, and it's really interesting to see your own perspective and your own journey through it, because I think I've definitely see a lot of similarities. But I think overall, I really see Bitcoin as a whole right now in terms of its surge, and of course, it's not at its all-time high, and from a lot of altcoins currently, it's not at where it once was. But from a perspective of this sort of not central entity, but almost like a base entity, right? So I think that a lot of these new projects that are coming out recently, in some way, they're all to some capacity, in my perspective, they seem to be stemming from the Bitcoin concept or the Bitcoin idea. And I think right now, honestly has been, I'm pretty confident right now that in the strength of not the rally in itself, but I think the adoption of this idea for a true internet financial system has really started to come to light within the past few months. And I think in light of the tragedy of the pandemic and COVID-19, I think a lot of the legacy financial system and a lot of the sort of deficiencies that are being come to light are really putting a lot of emphasis on the importance for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general right now, and their power from not only a governance perspective, from things such as issuing stimulus, from instant access, but also to those who are in sort of situations that don't have that direct access to finance, that are able to now, via the systems that are developed, access that. So I think right now Bitcoin's at a really almost like an inflection point between being this sort of magical internet entity that people were very apprehensive of for a while, now being sort of shown in this new light, like you're even seeing with a lot of institutional outlooks and changes between, for example, Goldman Sachs changing their perspective of having a purely bearish tone or a purely negative sort of outlook of the currency, of now seeing it as this entirely different power, this entirely new opportunity. And I think that's sort of, I think within the next sort of 1 to 3 years is really where the strength of Bitcoin, not just from the perspective of, say, an investment opportunity or a pure hedge towards traditional currencies. I think that seeing it as this sort of base for the entirety of the global financial system now is really being emphasized. And I think that this sort of rally that has for a long time sort of been hyped up between the cryptocurrency community, but it's sort of not had that all of that fuel to really go forward. I think that it's really being emphasized, really honestly, in today's economy. And I think that within the next, honestly, 1 to 3 years is really when this sort of next level is really unlocked in my perspective.
And as a follow-up, but when you say unlock, a lot of people see the total market cap of Bitcoin to be, or should be rather, around 20% of the gold market. Gold market is about $9-10 trillion, so that assumes a $2 trillion market cap. We're at 200 billion and change right now, maybe 280, so maybe a little less, something like that. That means another 10x. Another 10x means a coin at $100,000. Does that mean that in a crystal ball, do we see in the next 3 years a Bitcoin at $100,000?
I think honestly, with a strong degree of confidence, I think within that next 3 to 5 year span, I think that a $100,000 Bitcoin is per one Bitcoin is definitely within within reason. I think that a lot of these 100x coins that are really starting to, and as you're saying too, within the fractional ratio to gold, for example, with that in mind, really Bitcoin has just much even larger amount of 100x growth. Not Bitcoin itself, sorry, of $100,000 growth up to. So yeah, I think definitely within that 3 to 5 year span, I think that it's definitely something, and also taking into account the growth of technology and the rate of growth that we've seen technology sort of span really from not only growth and then recovery. I think that overall, yeah, absolutely.
I just want to mention Brock Pierce is actually in the audience. John, do you know Brock? Yeah, Brock, the head of the Bitcoin Foundation, one of the earliest, alongside you, investors, probably actually earlier, and a Hollywood star, and running for president of the United States tomorrow. So Brock's on the audience. Let's try and get him on. Brock, can you contact Dylan and we'll try and get you on here? John, do you know Brock?
No, yeah, it's an absolute honor. Thank you very much for even.
Yeah, Brock, let's get you on. Sorry, Hervé. Next, or Dorian.
Carry on. You're doing a fantastic job. I'm enjoying listening.
So as a follow-up, while we wait for Brock to jump on, do you see out there a Bitcoin killer? Meaning, what is the biggest threat to Bitcoin that you see? Would it be regulation? Would it be government? Would it be another cryptocurrencies, whether let's take the second market cap, Ethereum, or something completely out of the box, or simply an issue with the Bitcoin blockchain or protocol in itself that basically fails on us despite having been successful for the last 11 years?
I think from the compliance perspective and regulatory perspective, I think that being the Bitcoin killer, I think that it could not have, because I think in order to be this pure Bitcoin killer, I think it would have to have this coordinated sort of regulatory perspective from all sort of global regulatory entities as well as individual country entities. But I think the largest threat I don't think that it would be Ethereum either, because I think that Ethereum really derives a lot of its value and a lot of its fundamental attraction from Bitcoin. But I do think that what could be an eventual sort of threat to it would be its internal protocol, its original protocol initially. And I think that the developers of the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin protocol would really determine where that would sort of lead. I don't think that there could be another coin within the cryptocurrency spectrum that wouldn't at least hone some of its value from that Bitcoin, idea, its origination, because I think every cryptocurrency sort of subsequent of Bitcoin is in some regard with a respect almost to Bitcoin and its original, the original Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, I think, in my perspective, if that makes sense.
So, John, I have a question, and we sort of touched on it a little bit. And when I met Hervé recently, I asked him a very simplistic question. As my son refers to me as a boomer,
No, it's
and so I asked a bit of a boomer question when I was with Hervé, and that was, one of the difficulties I had was always valuing a Bitcoin, and we made the comparison with gold. But coming from a very sort of financial background, and I'm primarily listed markets and equities, it doesn't mean there's a lot of subjectivity to our analysis and our approach, but we can somehow get to a valuation that we think is ballpark in the sort of right area. And I asked a similar question to Hervé, and although I can't remember the answer in detail, he gave me one of the best answers I'd ever heard, frankly, and actually convinced me, and it was the first time. So, how do you value it? I mean, what's a Bitcoin worth, and what's the methodology behind it? Do you mind sort of having a stab at that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most powerful valuation methods is in terms of looking at it from the network and the cost to mine one or the cost to create one, and then as well factoring in the value added or the value derived from the cost to send it, or it's sort of transaction wise. So I think that that's a model that a lot of major institutions, I believe JP Morgan uses that as its core model to value the intrinsic, or their adoption of intrinsic value for Bitcoin, of the cost to mine one or the cost to transact one, and the amount of power from the mining perspective that's required to create one or to mine one. I think that those are very powerful bases for valuing it. But I think that in terms of looking at the amount of interaction, the amount of development on that network, I think there's a lot of factors that the legacy financial system hasn't seen yet that can be factored into its valuation. Like, for example, the amount of applications being built upon it, those subsequent transactions, or and things of that regard. And
when you talk about those applications, you're talking about the blockchain that backs it. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think that honestly, with some regard to the original Bitcoin protocol, I think that a lot of these subsequent applications that are being developed today, upon mainly Ethereum and a lot of enterprise blockchains, I think that adhering some form of value or some sort of respect, almost in terms of valuation, to the original Bitcoin protocol, I think that is to some extent almost needed, because I think that when it comes to conversion to running these applications, so say, for example, buying Bitcoin to then buy Ethereum to launch an Ethereum application, or having these sorts of sub pairs almost on the market, I think that all in some capacity plays into the valuation of Bitcoin. And I think that while smart contracts, and which is something that's mainly upheld its value upon the Ethereum network, I think that while building those purely on the Ethereum network has come to really uphold a mainstream approach. I think that the approach of looking at applications that are built also on the Bitcoin protocol, that are derived purely from the Bitcoin protocol and not from these sub networks, I think that definitely adds a lot of potential valuation metrics that can be used for Bitcoin in particular.
And I have one sort of not final, but one additional question, then I'll pass it back to Hervé. So I've just started working with a Canadian listed company called Peak Performance, and they are a marketplace for matching lenders and borrowers in China. Very interesting story, and they use AI. Is there any synergy between AI and blockchain? And because I get a sense this whole thing's going to come together and sort of be used in unison. Absolutely.
I think that AI's implementation within blockchain places a huge amount of value from not only the mining perspective, but also for things like you were saying, the matching between borrowers and lenders. And I think that within applications that are being built now, namely on Ethereum using decentralized finance and the DeFi market, that are using AI techniques to match these optimal borrowers and lenders, or match these optimal peers to one another, I think that that's a massive market in itself. And I think that for a while there was almost this, I think within the Bitcoin community and crypto community in general, I think there was almost a fear of AI becoming almost too powerful, or reaching a level of mining or capability that would exceed the fairness almost, or the respective transparency that Bitcoin's able to offer through having to have these multiple peers. But I think that the way that a lot of these subsequent networks are being handled to not combat AI, but almost work together with them and use them to access this next level of power, I think that it's an entirely massive market in itself.
Can I just ask a blockchain question? So most people still don't understand what blockchain does. I do. In this case, I do. Distributed ledger. I read all the books, but I couldn't find an application, in my different businesses. So I moved on. Where has blockchain been used most successfully and most commercially? I didn't really have the answer. And Hervé, you may have an angle on this too.
I think, I think overall, commercially, I think it has definitely taken a large entrance to the market of user interaction with things such as content and overall things like streaming. So you have things like online music streaming. One of the firms that I initially had a sort of blockchain consultancy job for was one of these projects called Suite that enabled real-time blockchain rewards and loyalty programs to users. And it enabled this different level of user capability. So it enabled people to stream things such as their favorite songs, their favorite music videos, things that are day-to-day processes within the commercial world, but access another level of value that brands, artists, and record labels and a lot of different people are able to use to then offer real-time rewards or on-chain sort of benefits. I think institutionally, I think blockchain is really being I think blockchain is really accessing another layer of the efficiency that can be enabled with things such as large money transfers or settlement-wise. I think that banks really have these process, and I think from the perspective of executives as well, or people who are starting these new companies, they really have a lot of roadblocks in terms of the financial side of things. So like things such as, for example, I was watching one of the live streams with Jack Dorsey about one of the entrepreneurs that he was working with in Ethiopia, and enabling that sort of payment settlement process for the people that are looking to pay for this new project that seemed to function almost similarly to how Uber does in today's world. And enabling this sort of payment system where the Ethiopian entrepreneur is able to pay drivers, where drivers are able to settle their own accounts and things of these natures, is really stifled based purely upon not the technological capability where people are able to code these systems and develop these systems and get them out into the public, but rather on the financial sort of side of things, of being able to settle payments and being able to access these things. And
Hervé, have you got a case study or an example for me on blockchain?
Yeah, so to answer your questions, I think again, for me there's two sides of it. So obviously I'm a huge Bitcoin evangelist and huge into the future potential of the technology itself. But at the same time, I kind of keep a feet in the kind of value investing principles of Warren Buffett, being a Columbia University graduate as well. So when I look at the applications, at this point, and looking strictly at the market caps and volumes of transaction, I see really one success story and one I would say, one case right now that is extremely strong, and it's Bitcoin. Besides Bitcoin and the use of technology itself, at a $250 billion market cap, at more transaction than Visa or MasterCard, at the fastest growth, international growth, number of users, when actually I value company in the technology space, when it comes to network effect, I look at Metcalfe's law, and I look at what is the value, basically just a reminder of what this, if you have a telephone by itself, it's not worth anything. If you have two telephones, it's 2 square. If you have 3 telephones, it's 3 squares. So the value becomes exponential. So when I look at these numbers, even looking at the hash rate when it comes to mining on Bitcoin, I see a huge potential in terms of growth of I would say the enterprise value itself, and that's where the distinction is very difficult. On one sense, we try to value Bitcoin as a company, and we see, well, it's not really a company, it doesn't have cash flow, but we need to see it more like the US dollar. The US dollar doesn't have cash flow, the US dollar doesn't have dividends, but at the same time, it has a huge international value. So in my sense, right now, what I'm doing, I'm betting not on the horse, but I'm betting on the horse track. And I said, there's not going to be any Bitcoin application that is successful if Bitcoin is not successful. When Bitcoin's at about $1 trillion, then I'm going to start horse picking. Right now, I feel that the overall market cap of $400 billion, it still has a huge potential, but in terms of really attracting institutional money that says, well, I don't think that this is going to go away within 2 days. We're just still at the tipping point. So right now, I put Bitcoin in that category. Ethereum, that might be also my next question for John. Ethereum second market cap, $43 billion. Again, big, but in terms of even of S&P 500 company, kind of average at this point. When we see Ethereum, we have on one side Ethereum, the other side Ethereum Classic, which was the original Ethereum. Ethereum, who's going, let's call it, through a revamp at the moment, which some are saying that what they're doing right now is just, trying to, change the motor of a plane while the plane is, 2,000 feet of the ground. That is very, very difficult task. So I guess my question, what do you see the future with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic? Do you see Ethereum kind of taking over and just, putting Ethereum Classic, out of business, if you will? Do you see Ethereum Classic kind of taking over, knowing that it was the original Ethereum, or both kind of existing side by side?
I think Ethereum in itself, I think its growth is really, I think a lot of it is predicated on non-Ethereum Classic influencer almost, but I think that a lot of Ethereum Classic value and a lot of Ethereum Classic price appreciation seems to not derive directly in any way from Ethereum itself, but from this sort of fundamental attraction to Ethereum. I think that Ethereum, in my perspective, I think that Ethereum's growth over Ethereum Classic is sort of targeted within the market currently, where it encourages a lot of user interaction, it encourages a lot of adoption from a lot of users that don't have that direct access yet, but are trying to get that access, I guess. But I think that Ethereum Classic, at least from my perspective, I think that while it upholds a lot of the original Ethereum sort of direction, I think that Ethereum now currently in the sort of work that I've sort of seen them sort of progress forward with in terms of Ethereum 2.0 and integrating like a lot of these new components that could add these additional evaluation benefits to it, like for example sharding and things such as that encourage decentralized financial applications or accessing finance to any sort of user. I think that that is really in my perspective where I really resonate the most with, and I can see like a lot of value appreciating there. I think directly with Ethereum Classic, I don't have that same sort of not confidence, but that same sort of, I guess, integration and interaction with. I think from the Ethereum perspective and the Ethereum core, I've been able to really, develop with and work with people and see a lot of the work that sort of shifted originally from this sort of, like you were saying, like a plane that is 2,000 feet in the air and trying to still uphold that sort of height. But Ethereum Classic wise, I think personally, and I think from a fundamental perspective, I haven't had that same interaction with, and that's not to say that an Ethereum Classic isn't, in my perspective, at that level or at that capacity. I think that rather I've felt almost on a sort of one-to-one hand basis the push from the Ethereum core side, if that makes sense.
John, what's the new thing that Dorian and I have not yet heard about, and Hervé might not have heard about? What's coming around the corner?
I think something that's extremely powerful currently and that's making a lot of noise behind the scenes really is one project in particular called Avalanche, which is AVAX, which is their token represented by AVAX. And they rather have an approach that integrates a lot of these current blockchain systems and advances it to another level using interoperable blockchains. So I think that one of the like a large focus, at least in my perspective currently, for cryptocurrency and blockchain is enabling this interaction and this connectivity amongst these different blockchains and deriving the largest benefits. So I think that
like iOS is the crypto things connecting. And Hervé, I noticed you were typing in AVAX and Avalanche, so you might not have heard about that. Am I right? Am I right?
I was wondering if you're going to ask me the same question, and I was looking at my pick, which was Decentraland, a company from Argentina, and I was seeing what was the year-to-date return, which was up 99%. So that's what I was doing. But to answer you, it's called Decentraland, and the token is called Mana, MANA. Is basically they're building a second life on the blockchain. But to answer your question, and I've said in a more conservative type of way, for me the next big thing still now is Bitcoin. When we're talking about a 10x potential return within the next 5 years, I think a lot of people would pick that on their portfolio any time of the day.
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. And I think that, regardless of which asset is sort of that next sort of component to the next level of cryptocurrency and blockchain, I think that, like, as you're saying, Bitcoin really stands in each sort of way as that base sort of layer, that regardless of the next new project, that next best project, it still will in some way derive that value to Bitcoin. And so I definitely agree.
So everyone's
John, I think,
yeah, sorry, Dorian, go ahead. Apologies.
Sorry, Rob. We've got a couple of questions from the audience. One from Rickers, two from Rickers actually. One which we've kind of sort of discussed already, but do you guys really think Bitcoin will reach 100K or even as much as 1 million per coin? And then he has a follow-up question, which is, I see as Bitcoin price rises, other cryptocurrency follows, and then when it goes down, the rest follows. So my question is, do you think other cryptos will be independent from Bitcoin price jumps and falls in the future?
I think that there will come a time at which Bitcoin does reach 100,000. I think that with the introduction of a lot of these companies now, specifically what sort of was really a driver for me in that sort of conclusion for $100,000 pricing was really when Facebook started to get involved and started to work towards this interest in it in itself. I think that it creates almost an ultimatum, and now you have companies such as Square and a lot of new capital being introduced to it, especially now with a lot of volatility in the traditional legacy equities market and financial markets. I think that it's creating a lot of new interest in that. So I absolutely think that within that sort of 1 to 5 year span specifically, there definitely will be that introduction of $100,000 USD wise pricing of one Bitcoin per se. I think that as that sort of strength in Bitcoin starts to solidify itself and get stronger, I believe that correlation to altcoins and its performance wise, I think that it will start to sort of lose some sort of stronger correlations to altcoins as well as these lower cap projects. So I think that it will create almost the inevitability of losing that sort of 1-to-1 ratio of correlation. And I think that's just because a lot of these, and we sort of saw that with the 2016, 2017 cryptocurrency market, where that correlation was really started to decrease. So I think that will continue. And I think that's not directly, I don't directly think that will be a bad thing. I think that it will, be potentially positive for the overall market to have their own sort of growth and decline.
Dorian, is there another question from the audience, or can I throw one in?
No, go for it.
So, John, I just want to ask about Banz Capital. Have you got third-party assets under management? Are you running other people's money as well as yours?
Yes. So currently we're running external money as well as proprietary. And that's, yeah.
And what assets under management do you have at the moment? $10 million, $100 million?
Sure. So currently we have approximately 900,000 to 1 million. And we're looking now to establish a second raise of up to 10 million to have sort of a 1-year fund in that regard.
And have you bought a sports team or a private jet yet?
No.
Okay, good. Okay.
John, I actually have a quick question. I saw last week, I think it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, PayPal had got into the crypto space. And I think they're actually reporting earnings after the close this evening, coincidentally. So, for the people who are cynical about the whole crypto space, and there's a lot of people who are, when I saw that headline, it looked like quite a sincere validation of crypto and the technology behind it. I'm assuming you saw that news. What are your views on that?
So I think on one end, I think that for the mainstream perspective, I think that that definitely encourages a lot of interaction and a lot of introduction in terms of capital and investment. I think that directly off of that news, there seemed to be just a lot of mainstream reception to it, and a lot of more people asking the question of how do I buy Bitcoin, or how do I get involved with cryptocurrency and things like that. I think from the perspective of its valuing in terms of the long-term market, I think that this was something that I wanted, I discussed with a few other fund managers and try to gauge their perspectives on it as well, that it might not be that sort of propulsion to like that next level of price in terms of appreciation, that it might be some sort of component that seems to be getting a lot of mainstream attraction, but isn't core in terms of price, in terms of its development or what it's accomplishing. But I think that just in general, I think that it's monumental for the community. I think that to have that direct access is something that for people who are using outlets and exchanges such as Coinbase, who have like their main deposit or withdrawal, or not deposit, sorry, their main withdrawal method as, PayPal, having that incurred an additional substantial fee to have that withdrawn from Coinbase to PayPal. So now just having that direct sort of component is definitely bringing it to a new light. I don't think in terms of like it's intrinsic wise, like I don't know if that's the answer to that next level in pricing, but I think that in terms of mainstream adoption and mainstream usability, like that creates just a massive growth.
And John, a quick question on my side, and then Hervé, we're going to wrap up unless you have another question. But there's an election coming in the United States tomorrow.
Yeah.
Trump, Biden. I would vote Republican, regardless. People know that of who is standing. Mark Hesse, you won't like that. But how would the victory of Trump or Biden affect Bitcoin's price, or not at all? What's your view?
So I think based purely off of Trump's public opinions of cryptocurrency and public outing of cryptocurrency, I think that inherently it might not be the best for cryptocurrency's performance, a Trump election. But at the same time, I think that there's also, since his comments and his outings on the cryptocurrency as a whole, I think that there's been a large institutional shift from the outlook on Bitcoin and the outlook on cryptocurrency as a whole. Like you have Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, these huge players who are influencing a lot of the the opinion or almost outtake on these things such as cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. They've all shifted, they've all changed in terms of being new terms of new growth, and instead of having a purely bearish outlook or a purely bearish perspective from regulatory sides of things, they're now sort of adhering to this idea of adoption and this inevitability of this sort of digitization of money. And I think that for a while it was really apprehensive, and I think that
sorry, Hervé, I see cheeky James Gubbs just thrown in a googly at the last minute. James is a new hip. I have a fixed knee. James asks, do you expect Bitcoin and Ethereum to outperform everything else in the crypto basket over the next 3 years?
I think that inherently, I don't think that lower capped or all lower capped cryptocurrencies are going to not perform better than Bitcoin and Ethereum, say if they were weighted together. I think that judging based upon the past performance, which of course doesn't always indicate future performance, but the past performance of lower cap cryptocurrencies, these newer altcoins, and their performance in the general market, as opposed to Bitcoin and Ethereum purely, they've had larger margins of growth. So I think that I would rather not own purely just Ethereum and Bitcoin, but I would rather have a sort of not diversified either, but not entirely diversified, but allocated to specific like growth capacities in terms of, say, for example, application building and things like that. But I think in general, sort of to answer purely that question, just owning Bitcoin and Ethereum, I would rather
you'd rather have the basket. Yeah. Hervé, I know you want to say one more thing, and you're far away.
No, I was just gonna answer about the presidential election, given that it's a hot topic at the moment, and in terms of the views of the different candidates. Although obviously there's no public statement that is being made upon either side. What we realize is that on one side you have the Republicans, well, at least the head of the Republicans, that puts a relatively negative tweet, which I saw as something very positive, meaning that a few years ago we said, oh, Bitcoin is illegal, Bitcoin is for drug dealers, Bitcoin is the worst thing in the world, Bitcoin is going to be illegal by government. And you have the president that says, well, actually, Bitcoin could be a threat to the US dollar, which I see as a major source of advancement. I mean, you don't mention somebody unless you're really threatened by it. So I think that on the Republican side, they do realize that it's a potential threat to the overall hegemony of the US dollars. And on the other side, the Democrats, or at least the head of the Democrats, I just don't think they actually know what is going on with that. So on either side, I think that both has left the court a while ago, and it's going to be market dynamics that's going to be saying where's the future is. And in terms of the futures, we know that millennials are going to be the ones who are going to make Bitcoin a big success story. And there's 90 million millennials coming in the investment marketplace within the next 7 years. So they're the ones who are actually going to move the needle.
Very, very interesting. Well, guys, we're going to have to wrap up now, unfortunately. Dorian, thank you very much. I want to ask you one question. What's your middle name?
My middle name?
Yeah.
It is actually Dorian. My first name's Andrea, but I stopped using that when I came to England because everyone thought it was a girl's name.
And Dorian is more of a boy's name. Okay, I got it. It's confusing. Dorian, thanks again. You're a star. Hervé, thank you for coming in as well. Where are you, Hervé? You in America?
I'm in London right now. 2 days waiting for the lockdown. So starting Wednesday night, I won't be there anymore.
Can't you escape? Yeah, escape. John, thank you so much. Really, you've made a lot of good friends here. A lot of people would love to be directly in touch with you. And you are on the S Crypto group, correct?
Yes, of course.
So James, Brennan, Rickus, Brandon, everybody that's on here, you can contact John directly and get into a discussion. And thank you all. And thank you, Lauren. John, see you soon. Bye, everyone. Good night.
Thank you very much, Robert, Dorian, and everybody. It's been an honor.